Welcome to our Civics Saturday Late Night Live. My name is Talia. For those who don't know me, I am a community organizer, activist, socialpreneur, pretty much anything dealing with the evolution of my people and my community. I'm all on it. So I wanted to come to you this evening because we have an election coming up on Tuesday, this Tuesday, November the 6th. And so there's two things I'm super passionate about: civic engagement and public policy. And so some of the things that I've noticed amongst my people in my community is there's a huge disconnect in information. So I wanted to kind of enlighten you guys on what positions are up for election this November and how, to me, that affects us day to day in our day-to-day activities. So this Tuesday, when you go to vote, you will be participating in what's called a midterm election. And a midterm election is the midpoint years between presidential elections. So in 2016, we voted in a presidential election, and in 2020, we'll be voting again. And here we are in 2018, the midpoint, the mid-years. And so Tuesday in Pennsylvania, November the 6th, you will be voting in the midterm election. So this midterm election, we will be voting for our federal and state officials. So you have your Congress. Congress is made up of two chambers. You have your U.S. Senate, and then you have your U.S. House of Reps. This is, they are a part of our legislative branch of government. And so obviously they do create law, but on a federal level. And these officials actually represent us in D.C., our nation's capital. But these elected officials also have the ability to confirm or reject an agenda or policy proposed by the government. Therefore, if you're not content with any agenda or policies presented by the government, you would contact your representative of Congress and give them your feedback. Because us as the voters, we have the power to hold them accountable and also to let them know if we confirm or reject what's being proposed, right? So you have a more recent incident was with the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. It was your U.S. Senator here in Pennsylvania, like Bob Casey, who had influence on whether they were for or against the nomination proposal. And so then you have your U.S. House of State Reps, which we also know as our congresspeople, like Maxine Waters, or here in Pennsylvania, we have Dwight Evans and Brendan Boyle. We will also be voting for our governor, Governor Tom Wolf. The governor actually falls under the executive branch of government, and so, like the president. And so the governor is actually responsible to manage the state. So you can kind of look at the governor as our president of the state, if you shall. And he represents us in our state capital, which is Harrisburg here in PA. Then you have your lieutenant governor, who kind of serves us like the vice president, if you shall, of the governor, right? And so the lieutenant governor is actually the only state government who has influence on 2 out of the 3 branches of government. So the lieutenant governor falls under the executive branch. But then whenever you have a legislation with that has an even amount of votes, 50% votes, you would then get a vote from your lieutenant governor would then vote obviously for the 50+1 to break the tie, which falls under our legislative branch of government. So your lieutenant governor is actually the only state official who has influence over 2 of the 3 branches of government. That's pretty interesting to me. And lastly, we have our General Assembly here in PA. That is our state senators and our state house. And they actually serve as like the U.S. senators and the U.S. reps, but on a state level. So these elected officials create law on the state level, and they actually represent us in our state capital as well. And so your state house, a lot of us actually know them here in PA as our state representatives. And they, too, have the ability to confirm or reject an agenda or policy proposed by the government, right? What does that look like for you guys on a day-to-day basis? I want you to start thinking of some policies, some legislation that's important to you. And so these elected officials here, this is the part that they play on each level. And that is why this particular election is important. And so that's why I felt like it was super important to come to you guys, come live, create this platform, because we hear all the time, like, this election is important, this election is important. Each election is important in its own significant way. But this is how this one is important. Also, I want you guys to take into account that when you hear local elections matter, that's because these elected officials are elected based on the popular vote. So, meaning what the people want. And, you know, on a federal level, you have the Electoral College. So these are all things that I want you guys to take into account. So I didn't want to take too much of your time. I wanted to keep it nice and brief. But before I go, I want to leave you guys with some sources. So each county has what we call a County Board of Elections website. And here in Philadelphia, we have PhiladelphiaVotes.com. If you give me a second, I'll actually type this in the live. And so, yeah, if you go to PhiladelphiaVotes.com, you can pretty much, again, look up these elected officials in your county, the part they play. And this is how we can hold them accountable. This is how we can hold them accountable. We vote, so essentially they work for us. And so we need to make sure that we know what power that we have. And when we say that every election, every vote counts, how every vote counts. And when we say that every election is important, how every election is important. Also, there's a site called votespa.com. And so I'm also live on Facebook. So you'll see some of that popping up on Facebook, but for whatever reason, I can't type it in on the live on Instagram. It's not allowing me. But I'll make sure I go back and I put in the comment section those sources. All right. So I want you guys, so we have what's called a Fun Fact Friday. And I want to say thank you guys so much. This past Friday was 2 months since we've launched, and it's doing, the mission of Fun Fact Friday is to do just what we're doing right now, to raise awareness. We're all about building bridges, bridging the gap, and I feel like this is how we do that. Just providing more information to our people, reliable, resourceful, accessible information. So also, if you can follow my business page, TLD Building Bridges. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So I'm gonna get out of here. Like I said, I wanted to keep it brief. But I just want you guys to know how much power as a voter that you hold and how this particular election is important, and it does affect our day-to-day activities. All right? Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Join us this Friday for Fun Fact Friday. Y'all will be seeing us again for Civics Saturday Night Live. This is the first, but it's not the end. Thank y'all very, very much. Peace.